This video is a description of our top-of-the-line trigger work on a Ruger 1022 from Brimstone Gunsmithing. We call this our Tier 1 trigger. If you haven't watched it yet, by all means go back and watch at least our Tier 2 video, if not both the Tier 2 and Tier 3s, to kind of get some background on the rest of the inner workings and the work that we do on these to get them to this point. But definitely the Tier 2, because it talks about all of the Rimfire Technologies triggers that you can see here, and kind of what they do for the trigger and why we have them on our Tier 1s as well. The only difference between our Tier 2 and our Tier 1 is that it is a single stage trigger. We remove all of the pre-travel. So again, here is that Tier 2 trigger. As you can see, you've got a little bit of that pre-travel before the trigger breaks. On our Tier 1, there is no pre-travel. So you touch the trigger, there is no movement. As you continue to apply pressure, the trigger just breaks. And as you can see, there's actually very little movement. I tell folks there's about 1/8 of an inch of movement on these. That seems pretty accurate. That's really all the more there is to it. Again, they can go down to 2 pounds. They cannot go below 2 pounds. It has all the same stuff that the Tier 2 does. And that's the Tier 2 video. It really talks about all the triggers and what have you, and what all that does, and the different options for the trigger widths and what have you. This is just a single stage trigger. It's just a crisp click. This trigger is great if you're doing a bench rest build or you just really don't like the 2-stage feel. A lot of folks are used to a bolt action trigger, like on a Remington 700 or something like that, where there's no take-up, and this take-up is kind of weird to them. So they like this single stage trigger. Works really well. When we first started doing these, we created this option because I felt that polish as much as I like, or shape as much as I like, there was no way that I could remove all of the imperfections from a factory 1022 trigger or from its movement. And so the only way to make a perfect trigger was to remove all of the movement. So there was no movement at all, and that's the only way that I could make it perfect. Since that time, we've improved our trigger quality a lot, and so the Tier 3s and Tier 2s are pretty darn close to perfect oftentimes. But again, some folks just really like the single stage trigger, and it's one of my favorites for sure. It's just got a great feel to it. It's just a great all-around option. One of the slight issues or things that you need to consider with these is that a single stage trigger will feel heavier than a 2-stage trigger at the same pull weight. Let's say that your pre-travel takes 1 pound of pressure to compress right there, and this is a 2-pound trigger. Well then, once I hit that wall, I'm only applying an additional pound of pressure for the trigger to break. Whereas on this single stage trigger, I have to apply that whole 2 pounds all at once. But I mean, it still feels, this trigger just feels fantastic. There's no movement, there's no travel really. It's just, there's no perceptible movement in the trigger. It's just a great all-round option. That's really all the more there is to it. Is not a complicated thing, and it works very, very good. The Tier 1 obviously is quite a bit more expensive than the Tier 2. That's because of the labor-intensive nature of what we have to do. Essentially, we install a set screw through the sear. That's actually what this hole in the trigger is designed for, so that we can adjust that set screw in the sear. It is Loctited in place very solidly. We use red Loctite. We do not recommend that you ever adjust it. If it ever goes out of adjustment, we will take care of it. But you know, I've never had a customer come back and tell me they didn't even have come out of adjustment, so I wouldn't worry about it. But that's really it. We also spend a little bit more time. Obviously, you're paying for a premium quality product, so we take a little bit more time with these to ensure that absolutely everything is as good as it possibly can be. That's what our Tier 1 trigger is. If you have any other questions, or if you want to purchase it, go to our website at www.brimstonegunsmithing.com, or shoot an email to brimstonegunsmithing@gmail.com. Thanks, and have a great day.